there, thanks for joining me to color. Today we're going to be working on this adorable Whimsy Stamps image called Wishlist. So I've already stamped my image on some Neenah 80-pound solar white cardstock with Memento Tuxedo black ink. We're going to go ahead and give our image an outline with C0. I'm not doing anything fancy, or I don't care how thick my line is. I'm just going around the entire outside of my image to add a little bit of a shadow. And I like to do this first because if I accidentally get some on my image, I can erase it, or I don't have to worry about pulling other colors off into my background, which I do every single time. So it's easier for me to just go ahead and do the outlining first, and it makes him look like he's a little bit more dimensional and not so flat on the page. So I'm going to go ahead and do his skin next. If you were interested in any of the colors I used, I go ahead and put a pin card over on the blog post, and there's a link at the bottom of the description box to this blog post that will tell you everything about the card, and you can see some more pictures over there. But at the bottom of my post is a pin card that you can pin to Pinterest, or you can save it to your computer in a folder, or you can print it out. But it has a picture of the image, and then it also has the colors I used. I find this helpful because a lot of times I'll have a bunch of post-it notes on my desk for colors I want to use, and they end up getting lost, or I can't remember what they were for or what colors they go for. So I think it's a lot more helpful for me anyways to go to the pin card, because there's a picture right there and I can be like, oh, I really like that color, and I can check it out. So when I do my skin, I usually put the first coat down, and then I come in and I do my cheek color. So I'll add a couple coats of cheek color, and then I go back over it with a few of the colors I use for the skin. I usually don't do the darkest colors because I find that that tends to leave more lines for me. You can also do it the opposite direction where you go lightest to darkest. I just find for me it's easier to do the dark to light, and I use less ink, and it seems to work out best for me. And after I do my second coat on the skin, I usually go back over with my cheek tone, and then I go over it one more time with my skin tones just to smooth it out if there's any lines on there that I see that I don't want to be happening. And then my last color, I tend to just swipe over the entire thing to blend it all together. So next we're going to go ahead and we're going to add some color to his hair. So I usually start with the darkest tone unless it's a 9 or a 7, and then I'll start with the next one because I tend to be a little bit too heavy-handed and I put too much on, so I save that till last. And his hair is a little bit wavy, it's kind of curved there, so make sure when you're doing your lines that you curve your direction of your streaks with the direction his hair is going. You don't want them going in some weird direction because you will see those later on. And I find that it's easier for me to keep my streaks smaller if I flick the paper, the streaks towards me, so that's why I turn my image around quite a bit when I'm coloring. And then when I get to the last color, I don't do very good with putting the white streaks in there. I can never get that to look right for me, so I tend to just take my last color and swipe over his entire hair and color it all the way in. And then I come back in and I'm going to add that dark E47 as last. This way I can see how much I need to add, and if I hold my pen more up and straight up and down, it will tend to make the streaks smaller because I'm using the very tip of my pen. So here you see me tipping it so that I can pull the pen towards me to get those really dinky tiny stripes. Then I decided that it still wasn't quite dark enough, it needed a little bit more color, so I'm going to go in with my E44 and add a little bit of that. And I decided this short side here needed to be a lot darker because it's shorter and it's not quite as much into the light as the top part would be, so I thought it would be less shiny. So quick and easy for the hair. And then we're going to go ahead and do his shirt. So for that we're going to use W3 and W1, and we're also going to do the soles of his shoes with that. So I start with the darkest, so we do W3 first, and you can also do up here on his collar, you could do a couple of exaggerated stripes in the middle so that it looked like it was kind of wrinkled. I just didn't do that this time. And I gave it a couple of coats because I felt like it wasn't dark enough up there at the top. So I went back over it with my W3 and darkened it up, and then just softened it once again with my W1. And then I'm going to take my W1, and the little bird there has a little puff of chest hair. I'm just going to do like half of that with my W1 so that it looks like it has a little bit of a shadow under his head. So next we're going to go ahead and do our shoes and then the reindeer. So I'm going to do E27 up here on these little flaps of his shoes, and then we're going to add our E25 to fill the little flaps in. And then we're going to take the E23 and completely cover in the whole tops of his shoes, but I wanted the top of his shoe where the little between the flaps to be darker, so I went ahead and went over it 3 times just so it would be 3 times as dark as the top of his shoe so it wouldn't be quite so, well, it would be shadowed right there. So for our reindeer, he also has a puff of hair on his chest, and when I colored the card the first time, I actually colored that little puff the color of his shirt. So be careful when you're coloring it that you leave that and color it in with your antler colors. So I went in with my E27 to add my shadow, and now I'm going back over that with E25. We're just adding a little bit more, and then after I add my color, I tend to go back over my E27 line a second time just to blend it a little bit more. And then I'm going to take my well, got to do the face here, E25 up here on his face, and again I'm just going over that E27 line to blend it a little bit better. And then we'll fill it in with our E23, and after I filled it in, I tend to go back and swipe over the last two colors just to blend them out a little bit more. And I tried not to add too much to his face because I want to be able to see his eyes, so I was pretty light-handed when I went over that. Then we're going to go ahead and grab our E31 and E30, and we're going to color in his antlers and his tail and that little puff of hair on his chest. So I just went in with my E31 and I added a little bit of shadows where I thought those should go, and then I'm going to fill it in with my E30, and then I come back with my E31 and just add those lines back in where I want it to be a little bit darker. You could also, I forgot to do the paper, but I'm going to do the paper here in just a little bit. But if you wanted to do those now while you have that out, you could totally go ahead and grab the paper while you're doing that. But next we're going to do our green stuff. So we're going to do his mittens, the ornament, his shorts, and then the little leaves on the paper. The little mittens there also have some little snowflakes on there. I did not avoid those. I just colored right over the top, and then they're just going to be green. But you could totally avoid those, or at the end you could go over them with your white Sharpie paint marker and make them white, or you could use a jelly roll pen, or you could do some sparkly glitter pins on the top of that to make them have a little bit of contrast and stand out a little bit better. I just went ahead and made them completely green. And then we're going to do our last color. For our last color, I just went ahead and filled everything in, and again I go over the top of the other three colors just to blend them a little bit better. And for our leaves, we're just going to use a couple of colors because they're pretty small and I didn't need that much space. But you're going to want to hold your pen up and just use the very tippy tip of your pen so that you don't go out of the lines. Let's go ahead and do that paper I forgot now. So I'm going to do a quick swipe in all the shadowed areas with my E31. And I'm going to do a pretty good swipe underneath where that roll is and where his hand is holding it. And then when I did the E30 over those little dots over there on the side, I didn't worry about those because I'm going to go over those with either red or my gold glitter pen. So I didn't care if I got some on there. I just swiped right over the top of those. And then I'm going to come back with my E31 and add a little bit of a dark line right on the edges so that it will stand out a little bit better. Next we're going to go ahead and we're going to do our bird. So we're going to do him blue, and then we're going to do a little bit of orange for his beak. So I went in with my B52 and I added that wherever I wanted it to be darkest. I wasn't neat and tidy, I just kind of scribbled a little bit on there. And then on his face I decided on the left hand side it should be darker, so I made that side come out a little bit more. Then I'm going to fill it in with B41, and then I come back over it with my B52 and add my shadow back in there so it's a little bit darker. Then when you go ahead and you do his little beak, you're going to want to be careful because it's pretty small, so just give it a couple little dots of color and then you're done. Next we're going to go ahead and move on to the rest of the stuff, which is red. I always leave the red to the last because it's a pain in my fanny and I get it everywhere. So for me it's easier to just go ahead and leave it until the last thing. I didn't necessarily use all of those colors whenever I colored everything. Like with the little reindeer nose, he did not need all 4 of those colors on there to make it stand out. So I'm just using a couple on those. And then after I get everything colored, I'm going to go ahead and do the stripe on the ornament, the little balls on the paper and on his sweater. And then there's like a little zigzag there at the bottom that I use my Spica Gold glitter pen in to go ahead and color in. So for the sweater, he's got some little balls of string there on his sweater. I tried to avoid those, but if you go over them, I wouldn't stress over it too much. You can always go over them and make them white with your Sharpie paint pen, or like you can do like I did and use your glitter pen to add some glitter to the top of those. But I was kind of careful when I went around there, but don't worry if you tend to, you accidentally color them. It's not that big of a deal. So I'm just going over the edge of my the last red color that I used, I think it was E59, I can't remember now. but I'm adding some E39 to that, and then we're going to add R27, sorry, R39. So R27 to that, and we're just softening those edges and pulling it out here into our white. So here there I was going carefully around those little balls. Nothing too fancy. And then I decided over here on this sweater sleeve, he's not going to be, it's kind of in the shadow, so I've completely filled it in. And then I'll use my R17 to swipe over the top of the entire sweater to soften it up a little bit. So anyway, I hope you had fun coloring today. If you want to see me put the card together, I will put a link at the top of the screen to the real-time video, and you can watch me put the card together at approximately 42 minutes if you just want to see that. So anyway, if you have a question, leave me a comment down below and I'll make sure to get back to you. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit the thumbs up button, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and hit the little bell next to it so you'll be notified whenever I upload a new video. I hope you are having a fabulous day, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.